Embryological Stages by Anaí Barriga and Marisela Flores. We start pre-implantation in period week 1. This is where the female ovum and the male sperm meet together during fertilization. They form a zygote. We have a formation of cells. They start to duplicate to 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32. Inside the cell morula, you'll see morula. Meiosis occurs in the ovum. Then we have day 4 to 5, blastocyte forms. And finally, implantation occurs in day 6. We have karyotype, which is a set of chromosomes created by the woman and the male. After fertilization, the cycle undergoes mitosis or cell division. So there was this article regarding genetics, cytogenic testing, and conventional karyotype. This is a testing that you could check and examine the chromosomes to determine any abnormalities, and is usually done as early as 10 weeks of gestation. One of the most common abnormalities found is Down syndrome. Here to your right on the picture, you could see some of the features regarding Down syndrome. Day 7, blastocytes approach the endometrium, and then we have the trophoblasts starting to attach to the uterine wall. Endometrial tissue grows over blastocytes to complete implantation. During 8th week, the bilaminar embryonic sac form, and we have two lineages. One is the fusion, the second is the invasive. The syncytotrophoblast plays an important role in maternal gas exchange, nutrient, immunological, and metabolic functions. So, what is the physiological process of the embryonic period? So, we have induction, which ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm form, proliferation, oppositional growth, and interstitial growth. Differentiation, we will have cell tissues and structures starting to happen. Morphogenesis, ending with maturation. During the second week, at day 8, the bilaminar embryonic disc develops from the blastocytes. We have the superior layer now, which is the epiblast, and the inferior layer, which is the hypoblast. Third week, we have the major event. This is where the primary streak forms the bilaminar embryonic disc, starting gastrulation. Bilaminar disc becomes trilaminar embryonic disc, and ectoderm is now the neuroectoderm. Neurocrest cells start to form as the embryonic layer. Another article was embryology gastrulation, the importance of it. So here it says that miscarriages is the most frequent pregnancy loss, and most defects are related to gastrulation incompatible with life, where mother carry fetuses with associated teratologies to term. And fourth week, now we have the mesoderm giving rise to the somites. This undergoes embryonic folding and the development of the furnace. The gives rise to the primitive furnax, which will form the oropharynx. End of the fourth week, the face and the neck begins to develop with the primitive eyes, ears, nose, oral cavity, and jaw areas.
And then we have the facial development during week 4 to 12. We have on the right hand side the embryo, which shows the maxillary, the mandible, prominence, and the frontal nasal process. The development of fusion. We have the facial fusion, which is eliminated as an underlying mesenchyme, the connective tissue, making embryonic structure facial surfaces and making the structural facial surfaces smooth. The mesenchyme grows and merges under ectoderm during maturation of the structure. The swelling is due to proliferation, differentiation, and morphogenesis. The ostomium and the oral cavity. As you can see on the right hand side, we have the process of the ostomium and the oral cavity. It shows the oropharyngeal membrane, the maxillary process, the frontal process. As it keeps going, on the second picture, it shows the oropharyngeal membrane disintegrating. The third picture shows the ostomium forming, and the fourth picture shows all the structures of the frontal aspect of the third and fourth week of the ostomium and the oral cavity. We have the mandibular arch and the lower arch formation during week 4. As we start from the right hand side picture from from low to top. As you can see, we can see the oropharyngeal membrane, the frontal nasal process gray, maxillary process pink, and the mandibular process blue. On the second picture, we show the oropharyngeal membrane starts to disintegrate, forming the ectoderm. The third picture shows forming the ectoderm and forming the ostomium, which is the mouth, and ending with the embryo, forming the maxillary, the mandible, and the frontal nasal processes. The frontal nasal process and upper face formation, we still continue on the 4th week. The frontal nasal process forms the cephalic end, the placodes, which are the islands, the length of placode, nasal placode. We have the intermaxillary segment, fuses medial nasal process on the inside of the ostomium. We have the upper and the lower lip, which is formed once the maxillary process is formed, fuses with medial nasal process on both sides of the ostomium, and the upper lip is formed. The maxillary process contributes to the medial nasal process, and the medial nasal process contributes to the philtrum. We have the development of the pharynx, uh, includes the foregut, the primary pharynx, the oropharynx, and it has branches and pouches. The first branch forms the mandibular arch, the second branch forms the hyoid arch, and the third branch has the unnamed cartilage responsible for parts of the hyoid bone. Here we have the palatal development during to during 5 to 12 week. We have the during 5 to 6 week, we see the primary palate, which includes the intermaxillary segment that fuses with the medial nasal process. During week 6 to 12, we have the secondary palate, which fuse the palatal shelves from the maxillary process. The bilateral maxillary process give rise to the palatal shelves that grow in inferiorly along both sides of the development tongue, and the final palate is formed during week 12. We have the orofacial clefts. We have, due to the failure of the fusion process, the formation of the clefts are either the upper lip cleft with or without the palate, or the palate itself. This function is due to abnormal development during the primary palate, secondary palate, and the upper lip. It may cause difficulties in speech and eating, and it is most common during birth defect in children. The nasal cavity development during week to 12 weeks forms at the same time as the palate during week 5 and through 12 week, serves as part of the respiratory system, and the nasal septum grows from the fuse of the medial nasal process. As you can see on the right hand side, it starts from letter A, B, C, and D. Letter B is the nasal septum fusion with the final palate. The tongue development during week through 8th week forms from the primary pharynx and first four brachial branches. At the 8th week mark, tongue is completed overgrowing the second brachial branch, and is the fusion of the sulcus terminalis. And this is our references. Thank you.